heard they just sentenced Diddy for being freaky. Let's see how much time they gave the old diddler, the old freak nest monster.
All right, man. So the Diddy trial has concluded, and Diddy has been sentenced to 50 months for Mann Act violations in New York.
Months?
When the sentence was handed down, Diddy apparently hit his knees, started crying in the courtroom, wishing that somebody would have showed him the sympathy that he most certainly didn't show any of his victims. Now, I've been watching videos made by other YouTubers to see what everybody thinks about this, and you basically got two sides of the aisle, right? Some people feel like this sentence was justified, especially considering that the prosecution was seeking 11 years and he was only sentenced to roughly 5 years. But then you also have people saying that, hey, look, I feel like Diddy's rights were violated here. That's because the judge had said some things when he was sentencing Diddy that made people feel like he was sentencing Diddy based on charges that he was acquitted of, right? And I hear both of those arguments, and I want to talk about it today because a lot of these people have no legal experience. They've never been in a courtroom in their life. They've never spoken to attorneys in real life. They've never taken a legal education class. And for the people saying that they feel like Diddy was over sentenced, all I gotta say is those people are fucking dumbasses, and I'm gonna tell you why. Right, but before I do, let's take a look at the news clip where they talk about the sentencing for Diddy. And I apologize, this news clip is a bit lengthy, but it adds all of the context that we're gonna need for me to break down this entire situation for you guys. So y'all watch it.
Just sentenced to more than 4 years in prison, the 55-year-old was convicted back in July on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs had pleaded not guilty to all charges and was acquitted of 2 more serious charges, sex trafficking and racketeering, which would have led to a potential life sentence. Moments before he was sentenced, Combs apologized for his disgusting, shameful, and sick behavior. Those are his characterizations.
This was the most important day of this case, and Combs did give a statement about 12 minutes long where he spoke directly to the court. He talked about being personally responsible and apologized for what happened with his ex-girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and Jane. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and he said moments ago, I want to personally apologize to all of the victims of domestic violence. He said, quote, I hate myself right now. I was stripped to nothing. And when it comes to that video of him beating Cassie, he said, I was sick on drugs. I was out of control. I needed help. I make no excuses.
Well, at least he admitted it.
But the judge had some very sharp words in response to Combs. He acknowledged that he is trying to do better and told him that he hopes that he continues that, but instantly went into rejecting attempts to characterize what happened as, quote, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He said, you abused your power and control you had over women you claimed you had loved. You abused them emotionally and physically. He said the evidence was massive. I was sitting right here, he said. We read it and we saw it. Images of gashes and bruises and broken doors. And I saw it in the video. It was savage. This is according to the judge. This is some of the comments that he made just moments ago in court. I also want to note something that the judge mentioned in reference to Jane. She went by the pseudonym Jane, but this was also an ex-girlfriend. He said he referred to the brutal assault of Jane by saying, you kicked down 5 doors in her home, lifted her off the floor by her neck, punched her, kicked her, dragged her by her hair, slapped her so hard she fell down. Jane, quote, her credibility testified to those things. That she was a credible witness. So some sharp words again from the judge who just handed down that sentence, 50 months in prison. There will be time served, we believe, in consideration of that. So considering that, it might actually be 4 years. I'm just looking at a note, sentence is 50 months of incarceration. Agnifilo, which is the lead attorney for Combs, asking for more time to list facility recommendations. Also supervised release, 5 years, no reaction from Combs. He is still sitting, and there's a $500,000 fine. Prosecutors wanted 11 years behind bars. It's not quite in the middle, but it's a far cry from the 14 months that the defense was asking for. Some other things worth noting, You know, Combs was found guilty on the 2 counts of the Mann Act. This is transportation.
But he gonna get that time credit. He was already in there. So Diddy, I think you're gonna be okay.
Prostitution, and that is illegal in this country.
It shouldn't be that bad. I think you're gonna be okay,
during this
Diddy.
testimony,
I swear, I think you're
said that this case was not just about prostitution, but violence. She emphasized the violence.
I think you're gonna be all right,
and that is what we heard a little bit from the judge today when he recanted some of the testimony that we heard during the trial. Cassie Ventura, the star witness, the ex-girlfriend of Combs, released a statement before this sentencing was handed down saying, "I am so box-free because the swift retribution towards me and other him at this trial."
They'll be good, Diddy.
It's heard that he was sentenced to 5 years. He's been in there 12 months. He's going to get time served for those 12 months, and then he's going to be on supervised release for another 5 years when he gets out. They said that he took accountability. He apologized to the judge, apologized to his victims, said, I was sick, I needed help, yada, yada, yada. Okay, now this right here is the sentencing table that I've seen a lot of people putting up on screen when they're talking about this. And they say, oh, you know, Diddy, he's supposed to fall in Zone B. So if you look to the left, you got Zone A, Zone B, Zone C. They've got the offense level, and then at the top you can see the criminal history category, which Diddy has none of. So most people are saying that, you know, Diddy should have fell in Zone B, meaning that he should have got, you know, a maximum of 8 to 14 months in prison. They're saying, you know, it's unprecedented to be sentenced to 5 years for the violations that he was actually convicted of. And what I gotta say is, if y'all have heard anybody tell y'all that, ignore it, because they don't know what they're talking about. The people that are telling you that are not college educated. They have never taken a legal course in their life. They've probably never even stepped foot in a courtroom, so they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Now, me myself, I'm no lawyer, but I have had a little bit of a legal training, and the law is complex. All right, cases like this are complex. There's more to it than just that one sentencing guideline table that everybody is putting up on screen. All right, so first off, he wasn't of the Mann Act. He was convicted of 2 violations of the Mann Act. And the U.S. sentencing guideline for federal charges like this contain provisions specific to commercial S Act offenses. All right, so section 2G 1.1 of the sentencing guidelines is a provision that applies to the specific offenses that Diddy was charged with, right? It sets a base level offense of 14 and increases the level if the offense involved fraud or coercion, use of force, and threats, right? So when we're looking at the sentencing guideline, because he did threaten people, he literally beat Cassie's ass on videotape for trying to leave one of these freak offs. This immediately puts him in the zone below C, which, as you can see, is 15 to 21 months. Because there was fraud or coercion, there is another 4 points added to the offense level, right? Section 2A 3.1 of criminal sexual abuse is applied if the offense involves forced sexual activity, right? Threats and violence. And if that's the case, then there is a much higher base offense level of 30 to 38. Section 2G 1.1 applies when there are multiple victims involved. Courts have to treat each victim as a separate group and adjust upward for grouping. A separate enhancement applies if the victim was vulnerable or suffered serious bodily injury. Based on these factors, and I know it could be a bit confusing, but based on these factors, the probation office calculated a guidelines range of 70 to 87 months. That's what they recommended to the judge. Prosecutors argued that section 2A 3.1 should apply. That's the one where there was threats or violence used in order to make these encounters happen. They said that it should apply because he beat Cassie's ass, and they said that the offense level for this should be 42, and they asked for a minimum of 135 months, or 11 years and 3 months to be what Diddy was sentenced to. Diddy's defense argued that 2G 1.1's special instructions for multiple victims should only apply without enhancements because Combs paid for S rather than profiting from the prostitution. They also said that he should have reductions on his sentence because he is a 0-point offender or somebody that has never been convicted of things like this before, and because he accepted responsibility. They said with the reductions that they feel like he should be sentenced to 6 to 12 months. At the sentencing, the judge stated clearly that the advisory guidelines recommended by the probation office of 70 to 87 months or 11 years was appropriate. He ultimately imposed 50 months, which was significantly lower than what the prosecution wanted, but also significantly higher than what the defense wanted. He tried to meet them in the middle. Now, while he was sentencing him, he emphasized that Diddy's abuse of his power over Cassie and the other woman, Jane, by using violence to coerce them, justified this sentence that he handed down. Now, this is where things get sticky because a lot of people said, oh, well, he was not convicted of beating them. He wasn't convicted of racketeering. He was only convicted basically of transporting people to engage in prostitution. So we've seen people saying, you know, they violated Diddy's rights. They're using evidence that they shouldn't be able to use. They've over-sentenced Diddy. They did him wrong. Diddy's defense tried to argue that the judge couldn't consider the victim's testimony because Diddy was acquitted of trafficking and racketeering. The judge disagreed, though. He noted that sentencing courts may consider relevant conduct proven by a quote-unquote preponderance of the evidence. All right, so in federal court, judges have broad discretion to consider any information concerning the background, character, and conduct of the person that is convicted of an offense when they're sentencing that person. There was a case back in 1997. It was United States versus Watts. And in that case, the Supreme Court deemed that sentencing courts may consider conduct underlying acquitted charges as long as the conduct is provided by a preponderance of the evidence. Now, in 2023, there was a change to that. There was an amendment added, Amendment 826. And what that amendment states is that relevant conduct does not include conduct for which the defendant was criminally charged and acquitted of in federal court. So it effectively limits the use of acquitted conduct when computing the guidelines range, but explicitly preserves a judge's authority to consider that conduct as a sentencing factor. Now, I know all of this is confusing, but y'all just listen to me. While the guideline range can't be increased based on acquitted counts, judges can still weigh the evidence of acquitted conduct and decide whether they want to vary the sentence up or move it down. All right, they have the discretion to be able to do that. While the judge was sentencing Diddy, he acknowledged that amendment, but explained that the court could consider Diddy's violent conduct when deciding an appropriate sentence. The prosecution cited numerous Second Circuit cases that allowed the consideration of acquitted conduct and argued that ignoring such conduct would produce unwarranted sentencing disparity. All right, the defense argued that using acquitted conduct violated Diddy's Sixth Amendment right. They also cited a bunch of cases and noted that Amendment 826 prohibited it, but because the amendment applies only to guideline calculations and not to section 3553 factors, right, which I've got it up on the screen right now. It's the factors that can be used when they're imposing a sentence. Then the judge's reliance on this victim testimony to impose this sentence is consistent with current federal laws, okay? The Supreme Court has repeatedly rejected arguments that a judge considering acquitted conduct violates people's Sixth Amendment right, all right? In the case of the United States versus Watts, the one from 1997 I mentioned a minute ago, the Supreme Court upheld that a sentencing judge may consider acquitted conduct without violating the double jeopardy clause or defendant's due process. In another case, Williams versus New York, the Supreme Court said that sentencing judges need, quote, the fullest information possible about a defendant's character when they are sentencing a defendant. Using Cassie's testimony and Jane's testimony about the violence that Diddy inflicted on them allows the judge to have the fullest information possible about Diddy's character. In other words, in 2025, there's nothing prohibiting a judge from considering acquitted conduct when they are sentencing a defendant, because they have to weigh the evidence and they have to judge the defendant's character. All right, the truth of the situation is that Diddy's sentence is well below the advisory guideline range of 70 to 87 months and is far lower than what the prosecution requested, which was 11 years. All right, so anybody telling y'all that Diddy was unjustly convicted, his sentence was too long, the judge was using evidence that he wasn't supposed to use, anybody saying that is just either one, misleading y'all, or two, just ignorant to what the actual law says. Right? They're reading charts that they don't understand to y'all, and they're basing their conclusions off of that one chart when the law is much more complex than one single chart. All right, now Diddy's been given credit for the time that he's already served. He was arrested in September 2024, so he's going to get approximately 13 months deducted from his 50-month sentence. So he's got about 37 months remaining on his sentence. He may also get good time credits, so more months may be deducted as he does his sentence if he's good while he's locked up. Federal prisoners receive, I think, up to 54 days of good time credit per year. So that means he can get about another 7 months taken off of his sentence if he maintains good behavior. If he does rehabilitation programs while he's in there, he may get additional time credits, which may knock another few months off, but there's no such thing as federal parole, right? It was abolished in 1987. So I've seen people saying that, you know, he'll be paroled after 1/3 of his sentence. That's just not true. It's not going to happen. He may not have to do the whole, 37 months because of good time and rehabilitation programs he can do to earn extra time off, but he's going to do a substantial portion of his sentence. Right. So anyways, in conclusion, the sentencing guidelines for these Mann Act violations put him at a calculated range of 70 to 87 months. The judge imposed 50 months. He's got credit for time served. He may get some rehabilitation credits going towards his time, but all in all, he's going to serve probably about 85% of his remaining sentence. Okay. His rights weren't violated by the judge taking into account the victim testimony about him beating Cassie and kicking doors down in Jane's house and lifting her up by the neck in the shower and slapping her, and none of that violated his rights because that was used to weigh Diddy's character. Federal judges have plenty of discretion when it comes to these type of things. While yes, he was acquitted on some of those charges, there was real evidence proving he did that, and that evidence can still be used to prove what type of person Diddy was. Now, Diddy stood up in the courtroom, he apologized, he said, yo, my bad, I feel terrible, I was sick, I needed help, and all that's good and great, but at the end of the day, bro, you still committed violent acts towards these women. Taking accountability now is taking accountability a little bit too late. His ass is going to prison, which is right where he belongs if you ask me. He thought he was going to get to go home today. He was even booking appearances or speaking engagements for next week because he thought he was going to be out. So he was ready to get right back to business. We heard in the news clip, Cassie, Jane, they said, we feel like if he's let out, he is immediately going to start trying to retaliate against us. They're scared, so it's a good thing that Diddy is going to prison for this long. He gets to go sit his ass down and think about what he did. It ain't no going right back to business. It ain't no going right back to doing what you was doing. Ain't gonna be no speaking engagements next week. You did the crime. Now it's time to do the time. Man. But I wanted to talk about this because I did cover the Diddy trial while it was going on, and I've seen a lot of people making videos saying, oh, it's unfair. This is a radical judge. They did Diddy foul. They're using evidence that they shouldn't have been able to use, and it's just not true. And so I had to come on here and clear it all up for y'all. Hopefully y'all have a better understanding. I know it's a lot of legal jargon in this video. It can be hard to understand, but that is what the law is. It's complicated. It's complex. It's hard to understand. But Diddy got exactly what he deserved, in my opinion. They will be able to appeal this. They have 14 days after the day that Diddy was sentenced to appeal. I'm sure that they're going to appeal it, but I don't think that the outcome is going to be any different because the judge didn't step out of bounds. They didn't overstep their authority. The judge didn't do anything wrong here. Diddy did. So anyways, man, that's what I got. That's the video. Y'all got to let me know what y'all think about all of it in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, tap the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. And as always, it's been fun rocking with y'all, man. I'm out.
I don't know. I just think he was just a little bit too freaky. They should have gave him a little bit of time for all that baby oil, like excessive use of baby oil, because that boy took baby oil to a new level. It ain't even baby oil no more. It's Diddy oil. But anyway, the freak Ness monster got what we deserve. He'll be out early. He'll be out. But till next time, like, comment, subscribe, holla.